What is up, Generals? We are back with Ultimate General Civil War, and we're taking a look at the J&P Rebalance Mod. Let's play. We're heading into the skirmish at Prairie Grove. Right now, I'm doing a click-through of the army as it currently stands. It's pretty good. The standard size for a brigade is 1,500, plus or minus if I had a formerly Grenadier unit that I'm allowing to bleed down. 2 and 3 corps are my combat corps, and then an anemic I corps, which will get built up before Fredericksburg, is my sort of holding or junk corps. Now, to reiterate why I'm doing that, there's a I don't know if it's a bug or an artifact or whatever, but there's a thing associated with this game where the commander of I corps has a smaller command radius than other commanders. I am not sure why it works this way. And we bring in 3 corps because 3 corps is our defensive corps. So consequently, I've migrated my troops from I corps to other corps with the intention of maximizing my command radius. So in Prairie Grove, you're challenged with holding that flag in the center of the map there. The Union approaches from basically where this road is that kind of bisects the middle of the battlefield. They approach from the right along that road, and then from the left, they approach on the other side of this river here, where that farm is. I don't know if you can kind of make out what I'm saying is a farm, but top left, there's a copse of trees on the other side of the river, and there's a farm up there. They approach from up there. And a tiny handful of troops, it seems like mostly light units, approach from the center via either that road or possibly the scrub trees to the north. So that's generally what you're looking at. It's kind of a 3-pronged assault. Frequently you are outnumbered. And in the original version of this game, is defensive terrain. There's occupiable defensive terrain on the edge of these fields. So these dark brown kind of cutouts, I guess, on the terrain. Those are fields that presumably have been recently harvested, I'm guessing. And there's fences along them, and your troops can stand behind the fences. The issue is predominantly with the rightmost fence, which is currently where you locate where it says 3 of 14 brigades deployed, blah, 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 blah. That brigade deployment box or whatever element, that's the predominant pain point. And that's because given the angle where the Union approaches, I mean, you can see it's aligned almost perpendicularly with the road. Given the angle with which the Union approaches, that fence finds itself repeatedly outflanked. Additionally, prior to the more recent iterations of the Rebalance Mod, fences and trenches and the like were still largely perceived as being kind of a death trap. So in this battle and in this iteration of the mod, I've found that trench works are largely quite usable. And so I have kind of endeavored to, where possible, use them. Use the fences where possible. I've been pretty happy with the performance of units in those fences. And so what we're doing here is we're sort of assembling kind of a refused flank. So I'm going to use the 2 bunches of trees that are in my deployment zone and to the left of it as the anchor points of my line. Additionally, there are a handful of fence points immediately north of my position and then immediately north and left of my position, where there's the flag in the center. To the left of that is a farmhouse, and along all of these fence works. So you'll see me kind of occupy these trenches here. And then we're going to have a large infantry presence in the woods, anchoring, so to speak, my right flank. And what that's doing is it's presenting nothing but open terrain to the Union as it approaches. So I have fences which have pretty decent cover, and I have fairly decent cover, scrub, or brush. I don't know if this really qualifies as a forest. This looks like I'm in some sort of more arid's probably the wrong word, because I think we're still generally in the Midwest or yeah, so we're still generally in the Midwest. I don't know why this map isn't more green. But I mean, whatever, it's fine. So the point is that we're not likely looking at a forest. It may be just because it's supposed to be winter, I guess. That's a thought process too. We're in a copse of trees of one kind or other. So you can see the first elements of the Union troops approaching. And there's a large block of cavalry. I believe there's probably one more in this battle, as well as infantry. And then from over there on the left, you're going to also have artillery approaching. So you can kind of see where these points are, that are fences that I can occupy. 5th Florida, which is the 2,000-man brigade here, kind of hangs out in the back, and they're largely existing as a backstop in case the Union decides to charge en masse. They can provide point-blank supporting fires, and then, if necessary, charge in and support the melee that is happening there. So you're sort of seeing how on my right, the Confederate position provides the Union no safe angle of attack. So the best position for the Union right now would be to occupy the woods to my extreme right and attack from there. And mostly I say that because they'd be attacking from a covered position and they'd be able to provide their own cover fire. On the left, the Union has to cover across a waterway, and they do so under fire, even from the trenches, or from the, well, it's not really trenches, I guess, even from the fences. And 24th Louisiana, they're still receiving fires. And then there's the fact that 4th Texas Long Rifles is utterly dominating the left of the battlefield there. So the broad strokes of what happens with this battle, and spoiler, it goes really well. In the woods to the right here, you'll notice I've got 6th Grenzer, my light infantry unit. I have them there so that if the Union does get it into its head that they want to charge into the woods, there's going to be a sort of a backstop unit that can hopefully meet them and send them running. I have been generally very impressed with Grenzer type units, and expect that if I have room for them in my rosters, I am going to be bringing them as early in the campaign as I can justify. So earlier in this campaign, when I was playing on Legendary, I ran into the issue at Newport News, for example, that I tried, and this is a version you never saw, I tried to get fancy. I tried to bring Grenzers as early as Newport, and that was a mistake. Predominantly because in Newport you needed to have a solid front line with which to counter the Union, especially in Legendary. So I'm back down to Major General, which admittedly is it's a different beast, and Grenzers perform very well at this difficulty. So theoretically, I could justify them as early as Shiloh, probably, and I think I did bring dedicated melee infantry to Shiloh. They just didn't make it past Shiloh. Not because they died during Shiloh, but because I disbanded them after the fact. And my attempts at Legendary earlier in this playthrough were highly experimental, let's put it that way. And the experiment, I think, didn't really work out. So, if you've been watching the series, if you've jumped in later, let me just give you a quick kind of summary of what happened with Legendary. So I went in and I picked the perks such that the army I built was exceptionally high at training, and I was sort of seeking to double down on the fact that the Confederacy has excellent baseline stats, and I wanted to just have even better baseline stats, and I was willing to accept a smaller army as a result, as hoping that I would be able to capture good weapons off of the Union, and that was the general thought process. The issue I ran into is that I struggled mightily to equip my army. And so while my troops were pretty well skilled, I repeatedly had difficulty meeting the Union on relatively equal terms with regard to combat firepower. I was frequently outgunned to the point that, yes, the troops had better stats, and yes, I was able to get away with like light colonels or majors and still get 1 star in my new units, and that's fantastic. Except I was unable. I was always taking too many casualties, basically. So I'm not writing off legendary. I think there's a value to the play mode, but I need to learn what build is going to be the one that works for me. So in this moment in the battle, I'm kind of looking at where the Union's deployed, and now I'm probing their left, my right. I'm probing there to see, do they have any more troops on along the road? And it appears, based on my recon here, that they are in fact fully committed and engaged to their front, vis-a-vis 15th South Carolina and either 10th or 19th Georgia. I apologize, I can't read. It looks like 10th. So 24th Louisiana, 15th South Carolina, 10th Georgia are providing a solid anchor for the army. And so what I do is I say, okay, so now that the fences aren't going to be flanked, I can now enter those fences. I do so with 8th Arizona. And what we have now is the Union is successfully pinned. They're engaged along the entire line. And I have, thanks to the fences, been able to economically engage them at equal terms or at rough parity. What I mean is I'm using 1, 2, 3, 4 brigades plus 2 as backstop, so net of 6, plus skirmishers to lock down the entirety of the Union command. And that leaves me 2 free brigades and the Grenzers, who can now work on counterflanking. They're not going to get across the river, as you can see, between the snipers being just too good, and 24th Louisiana providing some great fires. The fact that the fences seem largely competent in terms of a frontline defensive bulwark. And this melee is a bit messy, as you can see here. Bertram gets a great charge on 8th Arizona, who does not really handle it all that well, and quite frankly, I can't blame them. I quickly throw 25th North Carolina in there in order to kind of send them running. Well, a brigade of infantry, the 12th Tennessee, sent Bertram screaming backwards through flank fire. I realize at this juncture that the Grenzers are now overextended, and I try and pull them back because I was getting a little ballsy. I wanted to try and eat up one of those skirmisher units. It was a mistake to move that aggressively. So I leave the 25th North Carolina in that position. 5th Florida and 15th South Carolina swap places because 15th South Carolina was close to routing, having been charged. And so that's the power of these trenches, is with the defenses in place that the trenches provide, I can safely protect, for the most part, a unit behind them as sort of a ready reserve. And so the second that one unit gets knocked out of those trenches, another one can take its place. And oftentimes I don't actually even need to do that, but having that bulwark there is enough. Having that extra step, the insurance, I guess you could say, is enough. At this point, I think 4th Virginia is wasted. It's my fault. They're standing behind 10th Georgia, just sort of twiddling their thumbs, wasting their time doing nothing. And this flank attack of mine, if it had had 3 brigades instead of 2 plus a light, it would be, even more effective. It's pretty effective, but it would be effective faster, I think is what I end up saying. What's great is these trenches are apparently quite hard for the Union to charge. And it allows the Confederate defender to break off a small chunk of his troops to go onto the offensive, as long as you provide a fire brigade of sorts in the rear for defensive purposes. And as you can see, as soon as 5th Florida's out of there, I send 4th Virginia in, And I continue to use 15th as a rear fire support. I move MG Fiasco up there for his morale recovery aura. And I've got the Grenzers over here bullying up small units, trying to just eat things, basically. And now I've got 8th Arizona and 12th Tennessee moving on the Union left, trying to wrap up that flank and push them into the river. So at this point in time, the counter battery, which I have not really talked about at this point in time, has been extremely effective. So in this battle, you'll notice I did not bring any infantry support guns. I brought 100% counter battery, with the James being the only gun that might charitably be called a counter battery gun. The James is, in my mind, kind of a general purpose weapon. So it's outranged by proper counter battery pieces. It is not as effective at maximum range as a proper counter battery piece. And when I say proper counter battery piece, I am here referring to either of the Parrots, 20 or 10, the Whitworth, if you can get them, which they're more prevalent in the Union campaign, obviously. The Blakely actually is a pretty good counter battery piece, and even as a poor man's function, the 10-pound ordnance or 3-inch ordnance. So the James is outranged by a good chunk of those guns, though not all of them. And it is really most effective at probably 50 to 75% of its maximum range, whereas the Whitworth and the Siege and so forth are most effective at their maximum ranges. The James kind of wants to be that medium range gun, and in fact so too does the 10-pound ordnance / 3-inch ordnance. So keep that in mind. Those guns are happiest in the medium range band, where they can lob their shrapnel, utilize their high rate of fire, and score pretty good troop damage in the process. So the counter battery mission I've not really talked about, and I'm streaming this whole time, so I'm talking to Boots and Cats, Warbob. I believe at this point in time Johnny and Panda were both on, or Johnny for sure. Panda was on it eventually that night, but not until later. And I recorded this and the last video, and then also Fredericksburg all in one night. And I just got slammed this week at work, so my apologies. I haven't been able to record like I'd like to for audio purposes. Or rather, I haven't found the motivation to do it. So at this juncture, the Confederates have successfully outflanked the Union left and are continuously pushing them in towards the river. This battle probably goes as good as it possibly could, insofar as I take pretty low casualties, and thanks to Medicine 10, I take even less, or even fewer, and I'm able to scoop up probably a division plus. So 5 to 7 units, somewhere in there. And they're all at roughly 50% strength, so don't think that I had this huge windfall or anything, but I pick up a lot of units. And I mean, you're kind of watching sort of how that happens on the screen right now, is we just kind of keep on extending and extending and extending, and whatever oomph they might have had in terms of an offensive punch seems to just disappear. And what's left over is units that are constantly on the edge of routing. The moment when things really trying to turn around is when I get 8th Arizona in the woods there to the north. At that point in time, with 25th North Carolina in the copse of woods in the middle and 8th to the north, there's not really an opportunity for the Union ever to, unless they push into the woods and melee me out, which is possible, there's not really ever going to be an opportunity for the Union to push past me and successfully attack my right anymore. And so at this point now, 5th Florida, 15th South Carolina, all these units here, we are anchoring at what is a new front line. So it's fulcrumed on 4th Virginia, and you've got 8th Arizona on the right, and you've got 24th Louisiana on the left. So I'm moving the snipers to kind of join the fight and really destabilize the Union that is kind of collapsed in the middle. I'm also constantly trying to extend my right flank whenever I feel like I can. And I'm also just trying to wrap up this one cav unit up there, that Langdon or whatever his name is, on the top of the screen. So if you look at my mini map right now, you can see the red dot, which is my Grenzers, and the blue dot, which is a 175-ish man cav unit that's up there. And I'm trying to run them down, and I'm not mega successful because hey, plot twist. Even in woods, cavalry's faster than men on foot. Shocking, I know. So we keep pushing. Maybe it's Jordan, perhaps. I'm sorry, guys. So I think I've talked about this a couple of times. When I edit, I'm looking at a probably 80%, 70. So it looks like it's a 75%. It's 75% zoomed in, and if I was to go any larger, I would clip. So I'd be over here recording audio without being able to see the full screen, which is obviously not ideal. So I take 75%, and that's the best I can do, and I do the best I can. I have thought about looking into trying to make the text bigger. The thing is, it's perfectly fine when I'm playing the game, and it's perfectly fine when I'm watching it in post, when I'm trying to edit some, or when I've watched it on YouTube. It's perfectly fine, perfectly legible at that point in time. The only issue is when it's reduced to this sort of 75% size. I just can't make it out. Some of the names, the text is quite small. So I've looked into trying to find a way to make that bigger, and I would love to pretend that it's not because I'm getting older that I need to do that. But I mean, I don't know. My eyes aren't what they used to be, I guess. Anyway, so you're seeing kind of the culmination of the battle here. The Union has lost all of its steam, and this is not really like a my style kind of thing. Like, it is very much my style, but other generals who play this game on YouTube do this as well. I am not giving them an opportunity to breathe. So as soon as I sense that I have momentum in my favor, I seize on it, and I continue to press the attack. And if they want to fall back and they think they're going to fall back and rest for a second, I don't give them that opportunity. Additionally, I push the Grenzers across the river on the off chance that something does manage to safely cross the river while it's routing. I'll have the Grenzers charge them on the other side, and then hopefully they'll route back into my guns. At this point in time, I am not envisioning capturing these units. I am envisioning gunning them down and getting the kills that way. And I gotta thank the guys on the stream for kind of egging me on to maximize my capture game, because there's a lot of good to be had in capturing these units versus killing them. First of all, you obviously get more recruits as a result of that, but additionally, you also get a higher proportion of the guns the unit carried. I still don't think it's 100%, but you certainly get a higher proportion than you would. So once again, I cannot, it's late in the video, I apologize, but I can't recommend getting on that Discord enough. And I'm going to have a link in the channel, or the commentary below. You start to see it. So Cloud here almost like routes, but then, immediately rejoins the Union, because obviously he can't do anything else. There's nowhere else for him to go. So I'm going to have a link to the Discord in the comment box down below. Do check it out. The server is fantastic. The community is wonderful. And I think this is about it. We're going to get the Grenzers in there, and they're going to start cleaning house. These Grenzers have been just so phenomenal. I've really been impressed with the unit whenever I've used it, and it's just a question. It's really not a question of when I'm going to use Grenzers in a playthrough. It's a question, it's not a question of if I'm going to use Grenzers in a playthrough. It's a question of when I'm going to use Grenzers in a playthrough. And it's really only limited by when I feel like I can justify having the Grenzers in there, because at this point, pretty much single-handedly, the Grenzers are cleaning house, and they are capturing these units. It's just bonkers how good they are. And admittedly, a lot of this is also that the Union units are aware that they're surrounded. They're aware that they're routing. They're aware that they're at a significant percentage below max strength. And then we get Clark, and I think we get one more, and that's all she wrote. And like you can see, a little over 2,000 in Union casualty or Confederate casualties, a complete board wipe for the Confederates or Union, and pretty okay KD ratios for these units as well. What bums me out is that the gun we capture the largest amount of is Springfield 55s. So I must have knocked down their armory value at some juncture here, and they're using these just garbage weapons. And they've got 10-pound Parrots, also garbage, and they've got 12-pound howitzers, also garbage. So yeah, it's not ideal, obviously, in terms of like, if this is the battle where you're going to capture a bunch of shit, like probably not this one. But I mean, c'est la guerre, right? If nothing else, I'll be able to sell them. The battle went fantastically. I'm going to encode this all together, and I'm going to record Fredericksburg as well. I know I promised you 2 videos last week. I'm sorry, guys, I got slammed at work, and honestly, trying to get back in the swing of things after Christmas was more draining than I thought. All right, so I will see you guys in the next one. This is Fiasco. Hope you had a good time. Signing out.